The tragic fate of the 12 disciples of Jesus, explained in a few minutes. 1. James, son of Zebedee. He was the first of the inner circle to face the ultimate physical price for following the carpenter from Nazareth. The year was 44 AD. King Herod Agrippa I, looking to gain political favor with the religious elite of Jerusalem, ordered a severe crackdown on the leaders of the early church. Arresting them was good politics, executing them was even better. Acts chapter 12, verse 2, records his end with chilling brevity. He was put to death with a sword, no drawn-out trial, no dramatic final speech recorded in the text. But historical tradition, preserved by the early church historian Eusebius, adds a profound detail. The Roman guard assigned to lead James to his execution was so overwhelmed by the apostle's lack of fear and by his absolute certainty that he confessed Christ on the spot. The soldier was executed alongside him. The man paid to ensure the death of a Christian ended up dying as one. 2. Peter, the rock. The man who spoke the loudest, acted the fastest, and failed the most visibly. He had denied Jesus 3 times in the courtyard, but Jesus had restored him, promising a path that would end in blood. In John chapter 21, Jesus warned Peter that one day his hands would be stretched out and another would lead him where he did not want to go. That day arrived in Rome. Around 64 AD, Emperor Nero blamed the Christians for the great fire of the city, and Peter was arrested. Tradition holds that as the persecution escalated, Peter attempted to flee Rome. On the road, he saw a vision of Jesus walking toward the city. Peter asked where he was going. Jesus replied that he was going to Rome to be crucified again. Peter turned back. He faced his executioners and requested to be crucified upside down. He considered himself utterly unworthy to die in the exact same posture as his Lord. The man who once ran from a servant girl's questions hung suspended by his feet, embracing the cross. 3. Andrew. Andrew was Peter's brother. He was the one who originally brought Peter to Jesus, but Andrew spent most of his life operating in the shadow of his more famous sibling. His death, however, stepped entirely out of that shadow. His end came in Patras, Greece, around the year 60 AD. He was crucified, but not on an ordinary cross. According to patristic tradition, Andrew asked to be tied to an X-shaped cross, feeling he did not deserve the traditional shape. But the most staggering detail of his execution is that he did not die quickly. He remained tied to that wood for 2 full days. And during those 48 hours of agonizing suffocation, he never stopped preaching to the crowds that gathered to watch him die. When the Roman governor finally succumbed to public pressure and ordered him taken down, Andrew refused to leave the cross. He stayed exactly where he was until his lungs gave out. 4. Philip. Philip was one of the very first to be called. He was a practical man, the one who calculated how much bread would cost to feed the 5,000. After the resurrection, historical tradition places Philip's ministry in Hierapolis, a city in the region of modern-day Turkey. He preached there for years, dismantling local pagan worship until he was arrested by the authorities. The method of his execution varies in the ancient sources. Some say he was hanged, others say he was crucified. But what the tradition consistently maintains is that Philip was executed in Hierapolis around the year 80 AD. The man who always wanted to see the practical math of a miracle gave his life for a truth that defied all human logic. 5. Bartholomew, also known as Nathanael, he approached Jesus with avowed skepticism. "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" he asked. Jesus simply looked at him and declared him a man without deceit. Bartholomew's end was in Armenia, and it remains the most brutal execution on this entire list. According to the Roman martyrology and the deep traditions of the Armenian Apostolic Church, Bartholomew was flayed alive. His skin was removed from his body before he was finally beheaded. The Armenian Apostolic Church still exists today, more than 1,700 years later. It is one of the oldest in the world, and it upholds this grotesque tradition not as a dark legend, but as the bloody foundation of its own history. The man who doubted anything good could come from Nazareth died without his skin on the edge of the known world, proving his belief was absolute. Before we talk about the next disciple, if you believe that knowing the real, unvarnished history behind the Bible is important, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This makes YouTube show you more videos like this and helps this truth reach more people. Let's move on. 6. Thomas, the twin. The apostle whom history has permanently branded as the doubter, the man who demanded to put his fingers into the nail marks before he would believe a single word about a resurrection. But this exact same man traveled further geographically than anyone else on this list. While Peter stayed in the Mediterranean, Thomas crossed the known world and went to India. He founded Christian communities there that still exist today, with 2,000 years of unbroken history. Around the year 72 AD, Thomas was praying on a hill outside of Mylapore when local soldiers ambushed him. He was pierced through with spears. The apostle who demanded to see the wounds of Christ died covered in his own wounds on the other side of the planet. 7. Matthew. Before Jesus, Matthew sat at a tax booth in Capernaum. He collected money for the Roman occupation. He was despised by his own people, viewed as a traitor and a thief. Jesus called him, and Matthew left the money on the table. He went on to write the first gospel, documenting the genealogy and the prophecies of the Messiah with extreme precision. But regarding his own end, the details are shrouded in violence. The Roman martyrology and ancient church historians agree that Matthew was martyred by a weapon, usually described as a halberd or a sword. The location varies between Ethiopia and Persia, but the unanimity lies in the bloodshed. The man who documented the life of Jesus with meticulous detail left history almost no details about his own violent end. 8. James the son of Alphaeus, often called James the Less to distinguish him from the brother of John. Tradition tells us he became the central leader, the bishop of the Christian community in Jerusalem. It was a position of extremely high visibility and extremely high risk. You were leading the followers of a crucified man in the very city that demanded his crucifixion. Around the year 62 AD, the religious authorities had enough. They took James to the pinnacle of the temple and threw him down. But the fall did not kill him. He survived the impact. As he lay broken on the ground, the mob surrounded him and began to stone him. He was still breathing when a man stepped forward with a fuller's club, a heavy wooden stick used to beat clothes, and delivered a crushing blow to his head. A Jewish historian named Flavius Josephus, who was not a Christian, recorded this exact event. An unbelieving historian documented the brutal end of a believer. 9. Judas Thaddeus, not Iscariot. This is the other Judas, the one who asked Jesus why he would reveal himself to the disciples and not to the world. Judas Thaddeus is said to have traveled to Persia. He preached the gospel in hostile territory, deep in the heart of ancient pagan strongholds. According to historical tradition, he was martyred there. The method attributed to his death involves being beaten with clubs and finally killed with arrows or an axe. He partnered with the next man on our list to build a church in the shadows of an empire, and they both paid the price in the dirt. 10. Simon the Zealot. His very name carries a violent history. The Zealots were a radical, armed political faction that wanted to overthrow the Roman occupation by force. They were revolutionaries. Jesus chose one of them to be in his inner circle, right alongside Matthew the Roman tax collector. Simon traded his political sword for a spiritual one. He traveled with Judas Thaddeus to Persia, and it was there that he met an end so extreme that ancient sources record it without any glamour. Simon the Zealot was sawn in half. The man who likely joined the movement looking for a bloody revolution against Rome shed his own blood for a kingdom that was not of this world. 11. John, the brother of James, the son of Zebedee. He was the only one of the 12 who did not run away when the nails were driven into the cross. He stood at the foot of it, watching his master suffocate, and because he stayed, Jesus entrusted the care of his own mother to John. John was the only one of the 12 who was not successfully murdered. But it wasn't for lack of trying. The historian Tertullian records that Emperor Domitian ordered John to be thrown into a vat of boiling oil in Rome. John survived unharmed. Domitian then exiled him to Patmos, a brutal penal colony made of rock and salt. It was there he wrote the book of Revelation. He eventually died of extreme old age in Ephesus. The only man who stayed at the cross when everyone else fled was the only man who was allowed to die of natural causes. 12. Matthias. He was the replacement. After Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus and hung himself, the remaining 11 cast lots to choose a 12th. Matthias was chosen. He had been there since the baptism of John. He had seen the resurrected Christ. He was thrust into the deepest responsibility in the ancient world. His official documentation is scarce, but the prevailing tradition places him in Jerusalem, where he preached until he was arrested by the authorities. He was stoned by the mob, and then beheaded with an axe. He entered the group to fill the dark void left by a traitor, and he exited through the exact same violent door as the rest of his brothers. 12 men. Most of them died in distant territories, far from any protection, far from their families, and without any material benefit in sight. What this reveals isn't just a history of ancient religion, it is a mirror. It shows us what human beings actually do when they believe something with absolute, unshakable conviction. And it shows us the terrifying price that kind of conviction always demands. If this video helps you understand the history of the Bible a little better, share it with someone who needs to see it. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and help this truth spread. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.